This is Desi. Welcome to my dad's broadcast. Why didn't the lion eat the circus clown? Because he tasted funny. Where did the cows go on Friday? To the movies.
Welcome to Two Dads Talking.
Yes, hi, hello. It's been, sorry for not that it's really a delay, because whenever we skip a week or two on recording, we somehow manage to skip a week or two on releasing an episode. So we really need to fix that.
We do.
I think we're getting some help, some professional help finally. That's getting us there.
We should probably shout him out here while we can.
We should.
I do want to shout out Tomas, our editor.
Yes.
He's been our secret weapon the last few weeks, even if we've had some delays in getting some things done. He's saving Doug like 35 hours a week of editing time, which is great. And we love him. So if you're doing a podcast, if you're kicking off anything that needs sound engineering, whether it's video or audio or other, let us know and we'll put you in touch with Tomas, who charges a reasonable rate, unlike most of the people I spoke with when I was trying to find a good editor, and he does a good job and a quick turnaround too.
Yeah, I've been very impressed. It's been good.
So we're happy to pass you along to him and spread the wealth.
Yes. Thank you, Tomas.
Thank you, Tomas. We love you.
Okay, so American Tomas, what have you been up to?
Over the last 3 weeks, let's see. There have been secret squirrel projects for work. There's been fundraising for the music festival in September. There's been taking my kids to Connecticut Sun Games, and there's been stressing out. And that's been my last couple of weeks.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. How about you? A little travel?
Yeah, a little travel. So ever since I've been little, as long as I can remember, my parents have taken me and my sister up to Michigan just for, woodsy rural camping stuff and all that. And so I did bring my wife up there once. God, when was this? It was probably in 2020, I think. It was, we only had our oldest yet, and we were pregnant with our second. So we decided to take the whole family up this time and make a big to-do about it. I mean, it's essentially, 2 days of driving with multiple small children in the car. I think it went better than I thought it was going to go, but it was just fun. We did a lot of the things that, a couple of the things that have been around there for a while. It was one of those classic nostalgia things, like getting my kids to do the same things that I did when I was a kid. I always caught her first fish.
Wow.
And it was actually a good fish. It was probably like an 8-ish inch long bluegill or sunfish.
Wow.
Pretty big for that area. So that was nice. She had a lot of fun, before we got eaten alive about 20 minutes later by mosquitoes. So luckily she got it.
You're supposed to bring your wife as a distraction.
Well, she had the other kids. They ran back to get something when it happened. But I mean, the bugs were bad anyway. But then we had a little, 4th of July and celebration out there just as a family, and it was great. And it was just typical family vacation. We hit a campsite on the way up, and we hit just a hotel on the way back. Had the whole family up eating a complimentary hotel breakfast in the morning, and the kids were telling us they had one of those pancake makers where you press a button and it just makes 2 pancakes and they roll out after a minute, and they're like, we should get one of these for our house. You don't eat pancakes normally, like ever. I know, it was fun. I mean, let me clarify. Complimentary hotel breakfasts are like a fetish of mine. Like if I'm in a hotel, like I get up and like I'm going to have a complimentary breakfast, but anywhere else, I'm like, it's fine. I can wait until like 3 p.m. before I eat.
Oh, you're one of those. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's complimentary. It's built into your price or your room. Exactly. So you're going to get it. Yep.
Yeah. And it's not even, usually it's not even good food. It's just like, you know what? That bagel tastes mighty nice this morning. If it's not complimentary, fuck that. I ain't touching shit.
Do you take the shampoo bottles too? The soap and the shampoo and the lotions? No. You take those? Take the batteries out of the remotes and the light bulbs out of the lamps?
I'm not a barbarian, Tom.
Well, I was going to make you a Ross Geller instead of a Rachel Green. I was going to go ahead and change the Friends comparison a little bit.
Good. Another reference I don't understand.
Oh, gosh. Goodness gracious. What am I doing?
I don't know. What are you doing?
I need to get you on the Friends train. Although, now we've got way too much ground to cover. That would take too long. All right. Anyway, let's talk about something our listeners will care about because we have listeners now.
Yeah. Right.
We actually have listeners. We should do things that they're going to care about.
Yeah, we should.
Before we dive in, by the time this published, I believe I will have our first sponsor signed up and on board and wrapped up and done. So that'll be cool. So more to follow on that. But make sure you're still sharing us on social media. Make sure you're following us and liking us and telling your friends about us. If everybody who listened, and I know there are people who listen regularly because when we didn't post the last 2 weeks, I got messages every Wednesday. And yesterday I got messages again saying, you said you were posting, you were publishing this week.
Did you blame me? Because it was actually my fault.
Nope, I did not. Nope, I don't do that. I don't throw people in front of the bus if I can help it. That's not what I like to do.
Ultra conservative.
That's me.
So but everybody listening,
the best thing you can do for us listeners is to just recommend this to one friend. Stop blaming Doug. Doug, stop blaming yourself. And recommend this to one friend. That's if all of you did that would be super, super helpful. I know I push it pretty hard. I talk to people everywhere I go about it. And, I'm sure I probably don't convert that many, but if you're an avid listener and you're telling someone else, hey, I've got this podcast, I think it'd be something you'd enjoy, a good fit for you. We would appreciate that. We appreciate the help in sharing it. We would just appreciate some love.
Interesting. You said convert, almost like religion.
Did I? Oh, wow. What a
really coinky dinky.
What a coinky dinky segue that is.
Kind of word to use. Man. There.
So it's almost like my brain is primed with all these words already. It's like I've been thinking about this for a little bit today.
Yeah, I'd wager it.
Yeah. All right. Well, in case you haven't figured it out yet, tonight we're dipping our toes in religious waters, not quite a full baptism, but we are going to talk about the Mandalorian's religious wager. I'm very excited about this. Pedro Pascal's wager. Super pumped.
Yes, Pascal's wager. So I brought this discussion. It wasn't a reason. I didn't bring it just because this would be a fun thing to talk about. I mean, it is, but the reason I wanted to bring it was I was on X. I'm going to try to say X and not Twitter anymore. I don't know. Try to be one of the cool kids and call things by their current names. But every time I say X, I'm going to say that it's also Twitter anyway.
That's how everyone else does it.
So I was going to say, so we just keep doing that.
Well, it's not just you. Every time I see anything referenced, an X post referenced in any media article, it says as posted on X, formerly Twitter. Every single time.
We'll get there eventually. Maybe when Elon finally gets someone on Mars, we'll be like, okay, dude, we'll call your app by its new name. You get the credit you deserve. Well, anyway, focus, Tom. The reason I wanted to bring this up was because it was brought up on Twitter just as a general, discuss kind of thing. And the responses were some mix of interesting / depressing / upsetting, because I think it really showed how people tackle what I thought honestly was kind of like a philosophy 101 kind of problem. So for those who are less familiar, I think most people have probably heard of it, at least in some form. You never heard of it?
I've heard of it, but again, I took political science and philosophy classes and I read everything. I don't think most people have.
That's what I mean. It may be not, because I mean, hell, that's my degrees in philosophy. Right. So I heard stuff like this all the time. So
yeah, I don't think it's the common knowledge you're assuming.
Yeah.
It is.
All right,
I think you got lucky that I had some background with it. I don't think most people will.
Okay, fair. Okay, so Pascal's wager, it was contrived, if you will, conceived by the Pascal, like the mathematician. His wager, in so many words, is if there is a God and you believe in God and try to follow God and all that, that's good. You have a chance to get to heaven. And if you don't, then, you're going to hell or just popping out of existence or whatever. That's bad. If there's not a God, then whether you believe in God or not, we all end up in the same place either way. So therefore, Pascal's wager is you should try to believe in a God and follow a God and worship a God and all that, because it can't hurt you. That's basically it. It's slightly more fleshed out, but that's the whole thing in a nutshell. Was if there's not a God, then who cares? It doesn't matter what we do. And if there is a God, then you'll be really happy that you tried to follow him. And I saw that proposed on the X, and some of the responses were absolutely phenomenal. Like, people were saying things like, well, if God does exist, he shouldn't need me to worship him. And I don't want to worship a selfish God like that. And then there were other people saying things like, but he doesn't exist. So why would I worship something that doesn't exist? And then there were even still other reactions that said things like, why would God create us? Like this can't make sense because if it was true, then like there's no other alternative thought. Like someone tried to like 4D chess their way into saying, well, because this is such an easy logic problem, God can't exist because then it would make sense to just believe in him because this is such an easy logic problem. And it was just, I did not expect it. And I just wanted to kind of rehash the whole Pascal wager thing and kind of go over that. I think it was a referendum on sort of where a lot of people are in our society right now. It showed that a lot of people base their own worldview through themselves, not through any exterior code. So I've been talking for a while, and I want to give Tom the floor here to launch it. But that was the impetus for this.
Yeah. I guess I will start with the very basic concept that Pascal's wager in itself, even if you want to take the point of view that this is a super simplistic, super reductionistic, that's kind of my point of view, is it's just too simple a thing. Whether you believe in this or not, whether you find an argument that you like it or not, it does not prove or disprove God's existence. The people who are saying this is such a simple thing, therefore there is no God that can be omniscient and omnipotent and complex. Like it's silly to think that something like this could actually be used to prove or disprove God's existence. That's not the purpose of this thing. So that's not where we're supposed to be going with this. No matter how you view Pascal's wager, this does not in any way prove or disprove God's existence. Okay, that's a whole separate argument. That's not what this is. I'm going to call him Blaise because I feel like he and I are on first terms. So Blaise Pascal, I'm just going to call him Blaise. This way, when we go to look at titles for this, we can like consider Let's Blaze, and then a picture of the Blaze cartoon can be our logo or our thumbprint or our thumbnail for this. That'd be kind of fun. My kids would love it. The whole argument is not meant to be what I think it is right now. He published it in something, or he didn't publish it. It was published after his death, I think. I believe it was a posthumous publication. Pensis or Penses or Pensays or something like that was the name of the document. And it was essentially his argument for showing, like you said, why you should try to believe in God. If you have no external...
Yeah, it was an argument for like how to live. He was trying to give sort of a direction for life because, you know, that was while all this math stuff was happening, you know, like Pythagoras was one of the same guys too. Like in a lot of these like hundreds and even thousands of BC, these same guys that were coming up with these math theorems were also pseudo philosophers of their time. And they were exploring a lot. They were kind of in that same belief of everything is kind of one big interconnected ball. And so to their mind, the mathematics that they were studying was also kind of the fabric of the universe and how the universe works. And in some ways, they probably weren't that far off. I mean, they really were kind of onto something. So they were trying to connect the religion stuff to kind of the math and kind of show how there was like the design and all that stuff. So Pascal's sitting there saying, yeah, you want to know how to live your life as if there's a God because you'll be better off for it. And the kind of the end result was just the one that got carried through. So,
right. And at the end of the day, it makes perfect sense. He kind of broke it down. You know, I talk a lot about how I see the world in terms of poker and how I apply approaches I've learned from poker to like the world. In a lot of ways, he took a poker look at this and he said, okay, well, what are the implied odds here? What are the risks? What are the rewards? And essentially, if you believe in God, then you have either infinite rewards or you have infinite punishment, infinite losses. Those are the two things at stake if you believe in God. And if that's the case, and if God is real, you would obviously rather win infinite rewards than suffer infinite losses. If there is no God, then whether you believe or not, it doesn't matter. You've got finite gains or finite losses. It's nothing that's infinite about it. So all of the value on this, if you're looking at this in a poker term, all of the value is in believing that there is a God and acting in such a way that you can win infinite rewards. That's where all the value is here. So he took a very pokerish approach. And I like that. I like that he did that. But I really dislike Pascal's wager sort of in general. I think for different reasons than you do. I understand where you're looking at this, and it's when you texted me and you were very angry, or the email, you were very angry about how people were like, you know, thinking that there was some selfish God that wanted them, you know, them to pander to him. And it was an interesting way to look at it when I saw that. I was like, oh, wow, Doug's taking this like a good Catholic probably should. Like this all makes sense coming through his filter. To hear you say here, like judging people.
Okay, it's two sides of the same coin. It
Sure.
reflects like a good Catholic, but this is all the full. This is really like the metaphysicist in me that's really pissed off, and I can explain that, but disagree with me first.
Oh, okay. No,
Okay.
You seem to take a little bit
Offense?
of offense there that people are
I
viewing
did.
the world
I did.
based on their experiences. And that was something that you said very clearly before I jumped in. But we've already talked multiple times in this cast that we act through our own experiences and we act based on what we know and what we see and what we do and what affects our family first. We've talked about that ad nauseum. Like that's how we shape the world around us. So it's interesting to me that that was the first thing you criticized here before you handed the mic over. It's like all these people just acting based, seeing things through their own self and their own lens. That's interesting that you harped on that. And I can't wait to go back and listen to that and be like, what brought him here? Because that's a position that we both agree is the normal state for human beings. We are not infinite. We are not overly empathetic creatures. Primarily, our first instinct is to filter the world through our five senses and through what we see and experience and smell and taste and touch. And that's how we are supposed to filter this world and experience this world and make judgments and use heuristics and survive in this world. So that's what's upsetting you about this is kind of interesting to me. I understand that, you want this to be thought of as sort of the one monotheistic Christian God is the source of morals and is the source of ethics and is supposed to be sort of how we see the world through him. But that's not how we're biologically built. And I'm going to go back to my original issue here with the Alabama thing and say that your God is not everyone's God and that you shouldn't be pushing your God on everyone. And Pascal's wager, this whole rubric he has, it only accounts for the Christian God. So there are some assumptions being made here, a lot of assumptions being made here. And what happens if you put a couple of different theologies onto this matrix? There are actual just hard conflicts. If you put Islam on here and you put Hindu on here, and then you put, I don't know, we'll go back to Greek gods, whatever you want to call that. It's not Hellenism, but whatever you want to call the Greek mythology. I'm sure there's a name and I just don't know it. But if you were to squeeze all those onto this rubric, well, then you don't have just four squares. And then a lot of these squares believing in a God contradicts all the other believing in gods. And what if the rewards are different for some gods and others? Because we know that they are. In some cases, a reward is being resurrected at a higher level of being. And in some cases, it's eternal life. And in some cases, it's going to a feast hall and drinking mead and eating food and passing out drunk and then waking up and chopping people to pieces all day long in a battlefield and then coming back together in time for dinner and doing it all over again. I mean, there are a lot of assumptions with Pascal's wager that my whole problem with, I guess we'll say Christianity in general, is that it leaves absolutely zero room for it to be anything than 100% correct. And Pascal's wager is kind of a good example of that. That's my first issue. And you're making faces, and I've been talking for a while. So let's give Doug the fire back.
Lots of faces.
You are.
So, just to be for lack of better phrasing, just to be a little shit.
I don't think either one of us is little enough to be a little shit.
Okay, fine. To be a big shit.
Yes.
If the Catholic / Judeo-Christian God does exist, then like it or not, he is your God. Okay. So if I'm going to take the logical argument when you say, well, he's not everyone's God, like, your God is not everyone's God. If one of these religions, whichever one it is, happens to have the more or less correct, rendition of God in their belief system, then that God is everybody's God.
Sure. But why does it have to be yours? Yours isn't even the oldest God. So why does it have to be yours?
No, I'm not making an argument specifically for anyone. I'm just saying, logically speaking, if there is a creator of the universe, then
there is one
that creator is everyone's creator, whether they know it or like it or accept it or not. So, I mean, that's actually really the root of my problem with people's reactions to this. And this is why I said it's metaphysical Doug that's super pissed and not any version of religious Doug. Like, yes, it's convenient that a lot of my religious suppositions happen to coincide with my philosophical suppositions. And personally, I think that makes perfect sense. Like, you should live morally, ethically, philosophically, and religiously all kind of aligned. Like otherwise you're just being some version of hypocritical. So I mean, it's to say that I'm mad religiously, that's not really true, but it just happens to be true. It should
happens to
coincide together.
correlate.
They should kind of run together.
Yeah.
But the reason that this upset me so much is I think it's actually a little bit of a problem that is afflicting I guess just society in general, like, you know, any first world society. We've talked before about putting so much focus on, you know, not death. Like this thing will make you younger. This thing will take away your gray hairs. This thing will take away your wrinkles. That puts all of the focus on you, the individual person, as somehow deserving of something that, quite honestly, you can't get away from, which is aging and death and stuff like that. And people's responses to this is saying, well, I'm not going to worship a God like that. It's like, well, then you're a fucking dumbass because you're not God. If you're going to sit here and tell me that, like, you're assuming for the sake of this argument that there is a God that does exist, all those assumptions you were talking about, those people are then basically saying, I am better than this God. And so I'm not going to worship or follow this God. That is a whole other discussion for the record, because I mean, that's actually one of the big, I guess, criticisms of the ancient Greek and Roman systems was that they had so many gods that were emotional and temperamental and competing with each other, and that made for messy theology that ran into some inconsistencies like you were talking about. So that system of saying, well, this God is petty and this God sucks and all that had its own issues. But for me, I don't know if I should go down this rabbit hole, kind of pun intended. So I'll just go down it. Why not? We're on a roll.
Yeah.
And I'll try to cut it off right after here to give you the next stop. But I actually took a metaphysics course in college. It was a super fascinating course, at least for someone like me. I'm sure it's the kind of course that a lot of people would be like, oh God, like shoot me in the face. But metaphysics, very short version, is the study of ultimate reality, as in what is really true, really real, like not just, you know, the computer and the camera and all that stuff we're talking about, like really like the stuff. Like, so when physicists are trying to figure out string theory and quantum theory and all these different things where they're trying to figure out how the universe actually operates and interacts and all that fun stuff, that's kind of shading towards the metaphysical side of things. Like, how are things really actually true, actually existing? And my teacher for that course, he was actually known for creating one of the sort of like consequential arguments for basically action, for like free will and all that stuff. It was called the consequence argument, but I'll give him a shout out. His name was Peter von Inwagen. And
It's a good name.
it is, right? He explained to us one time that you can more or less categorize people into 4 different like buckets for how they view like the physical world around them, how they view reality. And the premise is that Robin Hood is going through the woods, he's hunting for a deer, and he sees a deer in the woods about, 25, 30 yards away. And it turns out, though, that it's not actually like a deer, like the physical breathing animal. It's just the sunlight and the shadows and the various bramble and trees and all that reflect and kind of combine together to make it look like a deer to Robin Hood. So he loads up an arrow and he fires at this conglomeration of stuff that looks like a deer. And then the question is, what is Robin Hood firing at? And he said, pretty much no matter who you ask, they'll give some version of one of 4 answers. First answer is he's firing at a deer. The second answer is he's firing at what he thinks is a deer.
That was the thought in my head. Yeah.
The third answer is he is firing at not a deer, but he's still firing at something. He's firing at reflections and shadows and bramble and all that, and looks like a deer. And then the fourth answer is, well, he's firing at nothing, as it turns out. And so the point is that you can get actually a pretty real, it's like a quick-handed way to see how people generally view the world around them based on which answer they give. So my answer was he's firing at the third one. He's firing at reflections and shadows and all that stuff. So I'm giving some credit to the physical world around me, but he's not actually going to hit his target. And that's what Pascal's wager and like the way people are doing to me is all these people that are saying, well, this God sucks, they're saying that they're either saying Robin Hood's firing at nothing or Robin Hood's firing at the concept of a deer. They're saying that one of those two things for sure. They're not saying one or the other two. It puts morality and ethics and all that squarely out of their own minds. They are the sole arbiter, the sole source of their morality. And that's, I think, become an issue for us. When you live your life, if you're basing your own sort of, if your grounding for your existence is based entirely on yourself, I think that's where we have a lot of our problems, because we are temporal. We are fleeting in our existence. We're not actually a stable thing to base our lives around. So Pascal's wager for me is kind of like saying you need to base your life around whatever you think is the ultimate authority. And that authority, again, this can be a whole other discussion. That authority is what's really right, whether you actually agree with it or not. I have a whole other sidestep about the Miletians and the Athenians fighting. And there was this whole buildup leading up to it where the Athenians were basically, I'm going to really paraphrase it, but the Athenians were like, if we attacked you, we'd steamroll you. And the Miletians were like, but God's on our side and we think we're right. And then the Athenians steamrolled the Miletians in actuality, as far as we can tell. And so call it whichever way you slice it, might does make right too. And there's a reason why the Judeo-Christian God is omnipotent and omniscient and omnipresent and basically everything. He has to be literally indestructible in every sense of the word. He can't have any weaknesses, otherwise everything falls apart. Sorry, that went on about 17 minutes longer than I thought it would.
No, it's good. We bypassed like a good 40% of the things I kind of thought I was going to bring up when it was my turn to talk, and now we're into like a whole different room. No, this is good. This is flowing conversation. This is good. All right,
I should have started with, I don't really have anything to say.
Yeah, I guess, right? There's a lot in there that I kind of want to nitpick at, but I think the one that I want to talk about, because it's something you've talked about before. We've discussed this once.
Are you talking about like the lens thing, like seeing things through your reality or whatever?
No.
Like
I'm going to step aside from that for a minute.
Okay, I meant to actually address that, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see that exactly the same, but I don't think we're as far apart as it sounds either. I think, but we're not going to come to even keel on that. What I'm curious about is, I like your perspective. Let me take it back. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I like your perspective of how you're seeing Pascal's wager when you say that you think people are looking at it as though a temporal human being, a person who's here on a temporary basis in the physical world, I am not long-term. I am not even a blink of an eye in time, but I'm going to base all of my actions based on what I personally feel, instead of doing it on something that is omnipresent, that is everlasting and eternal, that is always here and has always been here and will always be here. It makes sense that I see where you're coming from, where you're saying that if I'm going to choose to abide by the way I see things instead of the way that a permanent fixture in the world that made the world, I'm putting myself before him. I'm saying I'm better than him. I get that now that you explained that a little bit, and it's interesting and I like it. Even if I don't agree with it, I like it. I am curious, when you say that people are making themselves I think you said sole arbiter of morality, I think was the term you used. It was something close to that if it wasn't that, but that was close.
I think that's it. Also, that's something I would say. So
okay, then we're just going to say that I nailed it. We're going to go, nailed it. Boom. Give me that sound effect. Nailed it. I'm wondering, because my issue with that statement, let me do it this way. My issue with that statement is that I feel, and I'm going to go with the Catholic Church because it's you and it's easy and I can poke the bear and you're right in front of me.
It's convenient. Everyone
My wife's
knows
going to hate me for it, but it's also extremely relevant because the Catholic Church, I think we can say, is the most, shall we say, dominant religion in the world.
I think Hinduism has more followers.
Okay.
Based purely on population, but
I think the Catholic Church is.
We'll give them a prominent tag for sure.
Okay,
I mean, they're I mean, it's real. I mean, Islam and Catholicism / Christianity are the only two known proselytizing religions, as in actively trying to convert others. That's part of the mission. So yeah, those two are the big ones anyway.
And I don't think of Hindu as regulating its followers in quite the same way that I think of as Catholicism regulating its followers.
It's not nearly the same.
So I think we'll go with Islam and Catholicism are probably the two.
Those two are good for this. I mean, that's more or less the angle that Pascal was taking anyway with a god like that.
I think they fit for that. And those are the ones that basically say, this is how you will behave. This is the morality of God. These are the rules. These are the rules. That's how I'm going to put it. They both say these are the rules. So assuming you don't want to be your sole arbiter of morality and you're saying, no, I want God to be, God is the source of morality. God is going to set the framework within which I am going to live my life and I'm going to act because I believe in God and I want to go to heaven. When you're listening to what the church tells you to do and the rules of the church, are you still listening to God? Or are you allowing the church in some other body and no longer God necessarily, but someone who is acting as the middleman, be the arbiter of your morality? Are you just handing that over to someone other than God and you think that you're following God's morals, but really what you're following are the church's morals, which are not always the same. They should be, but as we've seen, they're not always the same. So that's the question for me. If you are a devout Catholic and you're following the rules, are you really allowing God to be the sole arbiter of your morality? Or are you allowing the organizational church to be the arbiter of your morality?
And well, the former, if you're being a proper Catholic, a proper Christian, it should be the former. It should be God directing your ultimate morality. I think I'm going to make you proud, Tom, because I heard
I'm already proud of you, Doug. I love you, bud.
Oh, then I'm going to make you more prouder.
More prouder. Oh, make me the most more proudest, please.
Most more proudest. Yes. I was listening to a Time Suck episode on my drive back today.
I'm so proud.
Yes. And he brought up, I can't even remember the aside he was making, but he brought up a phrase that he had heard, Cummings had heard, which was, if someone plays Mozart badly, do you blame Mozart? Or do you blame the person playing it? And I think he had some sort of religious tag to it. So if the Catholic Church is advising you badly, is that God's fault? Is that really what you're following? No. Someone who actually wants to listen to Mozart is going to, first of all, they're going to try to hear it and they're going to discover different renditions of it. And they will ultimately find that some sound better / if you really start to study it, start to sound more correct. These people who are really into it will try to seek out some of the actual written music. They won't just listen to different soundtracks. They're really trying hard. They'll try to research Mozart, his life. They'll really get into all of it. And eventually they will try to find someone who they believe best recreates or performs Mozart to follow. That's really what Christians, and again, shortcut, we're just going to use Christianity or find Catholicism, whatever in general. That's really what people should be doing. I have actually been guilty of this in the past because on some of these past recordings, I've said this is an issue I take with my religion, and then I talk about some of the crappy things that people in that religion do. But that's really not an issue with my religion. That's my issue with other people in my religion. It's not really an issue with God or an issue with the religion itself. So the authority should come from God. The Catholic Church is like your expert, your helper, your advisor, your therapist. They should be someone who's helping give you the additional direction and education and everything else that you need to get to God. There are plenty of very, very obvious, that I think nowadays we can agree, examples of the church not being a very good authority to actually follow. I mean, some of those magical words include indulgences and crusades and conversion by the sword and other fun phrases like that. So even officially, the church itself, the Catholic Church itself, has said their role is to try to properly disseminate the word of God, the will of God. They have never said, exactly this is what God wants. The Pope has the ex cathedra potential, the papal infallibility. The Pope theoretically can say they are speaking ex cathedra, which means whatever they're about to say next is true, is the will of God. And despite some of the occasional buffoons that have been popes in the past, not one has ever used that. I think because deep down they really don't want to like get struck straight to hell if they're wrong. but but even having that capability with all the stupid fraud and everything else that's happened in the church throughout history, no one's ever actually themselves, even in the Catholic Church, said with that hierarchy, yes, this is exactly what God wants. They sometimes try to hit it right, but that's the moral authority, even by the church's standards, should be God. The whole point is to get you to church to talk to God yourself. So that's the answer to that first question, I guess. And that is really my problem, is that even the church is fleeting, is temporary. There's the phrase the Catholics like to use is that, Christ loves the church and the church is God's people and all that stuff. But the only thing that's truly permanent in that equation is God, because even the Catholic perspective of salvation is you die, you go to heaven, and then there's the second coming, and then we all live some like glorified existence with a glorified earth and glorified bodies and all that stuff. There's no church in that existence. It's just godly existence. It's just existence with God, and that's it, plain and simple. There's none of this institutional stuff at all. So even religious orders by that standard are still fleeting. So really, when I'm saying you should base your morality on something permanent, I do mean an actual God. I don't even mean an institutional thing throughout history. And this is the other thing too I want to get real nerdy on. And this is, I think, really at my base level what upset me by all the comments in X about this, about people saying, well, I'm not going to do that and you shouldn't do this, and a God who does this is stupid, is that I think we miss, even people of whatever religion doing their worship, I think it's very easy to forget that when someone's talking about God, and I don't mean Christian God, I mean just the concept of God, your creator of all things, heaven and earth, the universe, laws, whatever, that is a categorically different being that I don't think anyone's ever truly wrapped their mind around. This is not a supreme dictator. This is not even, like an all-powerful magician or something like that. This is like the thing that may not even be constrained by the physical universe, which as far as we're concerned is never ending. This is a totally, if there's even a way to wrap our heads around it in earthly terms at all, this is some sort of being that's operating in dimensions well above our 3/4 that we're working with. We cannot wrap our minds around whatever the God thing is, no matter what it is.
Well, that was a part of Pascal's publication. Part of it was that, listen, God is incomprehensible. We cannot comprehend what God is. That was part of his argument.
I mean, like, I've spent a lot of time the last couple of weeks just because it's been in my head thinking about what omniscience really means. And like, oh, well, that means you know everything. And people argue about what omniscience really means. Does omniscience really mean that you know everything that could happen from right now, or does it mean you know everything that has happened, or does it mean you know how to make anything that's possible happen, or whatever the definition is? If you really sit there and try to wrap your head around whatever omniscience is, it hurts. It's awful. Just think about even knowing every little thing that's happened. I mean, read up on any of the recent world wars, you realize that you'd be reading until you died. You'd never know every little factor that played into everything. I think people forget that when they're saying, well, I don't want to follow a God like that, you mean you don't want to follow something that you literally cannot comprehend. This is a categorically different being from us that I don't even know how to say it other than that. Just, this is in the Bible, God appears as a cloud and speaks from the cloud. And it terrifies the people who are otherwise loyal to God. Like, I think that was meant to convey the message of like, this is probably the best way to describe how I'm thinking of this in my head for what kind of being, whatever God might be, was that in that biblical story, they're up on the mount and dead prophets come back, like appear before them, Elijah and whoever, and they're like, oh, hey, Elijah, what's going on? Hey, man, back from the dead, are you? Let's set up a tent for you. Do you want some food? Like, they're all like, yay, rock stars are here. Like, we've heard all about you guys. You're so cool. Like, the dead are showing up to them, and they kind of get over it real quick, and they're like, wow, this is really neat. This must be God's doing. Like, let's play nice and be nice to you. And then a fucking cloud shows up and starts talking to you, and they throw their hands and heads to the ground, and they hide, and they're trembling. And I think it was Moses, has to like, or Jesus, sorry, I don't know, get my shit mixed up. Jesus has to like go, hey, guys, it's okay. Come on, get up. He's gone now. He's gone. Like, the person who you think is the personification of God takes a while to get your ass up because a cloud talked to you. So what is God really when his little voice from a cloud is infinitely more terrifying than literal dead prophets showing up? I think we can never really truly wrap our heads around that, which is why this upset me so much. These people purport to understand that they could even have a conversation with this God.
Yeah, but you can't get upset about that because, again, God is infinite. We are not. We are finite.
Exactly. But let's go with Hinduism. Same thing.
No.
The
Let's
whole
not switch off
Brahma
of this.
thing.
Let's not switch off of this because
We can't comprehend
we've
any of
already
this
said
stuff.
we've already said we're sticking with a monotheistic Christian God because that's what we're sticking with. But you
But I'm
can't
just
get
saying
upset. You can't get
Well,
upset
I
if
can get
people
upset.
can stop, shush, time out.
Did you just
Time
shush
out.
me?
I did shush you. You're talking over me and I'm shushing you and you're on timeout. We're back to episode 1. If people are finite and God made us finite, then you are not allowed to get angry that they're not able to comprehend something that is infinite. And that in order to try to understand, they try to see it in a way that they can comprehend. So if someone's dog passes away,
Unshush me.
and in the middle of my point, I don't think so. You're still
Yes.
first. If someone's
Damn
dog
it.
passes away and that person says, man, if dogs aren't allowed in heaven, I don't want to go to a heaven that won't allow a soul like my copper. I don't want to go to a heaven that's not going to have room for souls like my copper. If someone says that in a moment of grief and in a moment of loss, when they are less than finite, they are struggling and they are less than their normal self and they are emotionally distraught, people make comments and say things like that because we are weak and fallible and finite. You don't get to get mad about that and take that as a slight against God when he didn't equip us with the tools to comprehend the infinite. You can say, yes, that's stupid. Yes, that's a foolish perspective. But to get mad about it, you're not doing yourself or anyone else
That's
any
not what I'm
favors.
saying. I'm unshushing myself. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that people are so quick to categorize whatever they think God is as being on an equal plane with them, that they can decide whether or not they should follow or worship this God. That's more what I'm saying. I'm not saying that they
Okay.
should understand this or keep that in mind all the time, but in a controlled environment where someone's proposing Pascal's wager to you, not a severe moment of grief or anguish or whatever, which is actually addressed multiple times, is that, you know, grief and anguish are okay. They're human things to go through. That's kind of the whole point.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, is that these people are purporting that they are at least on some sort of relational plane with God, whatever they think of God. And that's, I think, the mistake. I'm not saying you have to understand it. I think that's the point, is that we don't understand it and we never will. And I mean, again, another aside, the people who purport to have had near-death experiences, again, let's just say another thing that is just a whole other can of worms. But the experiences of these people report is basically that they had some sort of like access to knowledge or motion or capability that we don't get as humans. Like, I mean, one guy was talking about how he was able to see the individual particles in a drop of dew on a leaf and then immediately zoom out and see like some of the other planets in our solar system. And it wasn't like instant, but he said it felt so smooth. It was just like he wasn't experiencing time, and he just had this new perspective on just literally existence that, you know, he loses once he vaults back into his human body. But he said in that same experience, God was kind of there, and God didn't even talk to him, but he got this, like, it was like an impression. It was like God impressed upon him, like, yes, you have all this new stuff that I'm showing you, but oh, by the way, you're literally like not even, you're nothing like me. You're not even close to me. Like he said, it felt like God was going like this and cupping his hands, and he was this little tiny baby in God's hands, even with all this newfound like experience. So I think it's like that. I think that it's people purporting to have some actual like legitimate moral authority. And if God ends up being whatever, everyone likes to talk about the Judeo-Christian God because that's what most of the first world is based in, that system. But if it ends up being some sort of Norse or Viking god, like Valhalla style, that just decides to chop off the heads of every eighth dead person, better hope you're not the eighth. Like, tough shit. That's just how it is. Like, you're not going to sit there and say, no, I don't want to follow you, sir. Like, that's just not how it works. So to sit there and say, well, this God is stupid, like, that's what really got to me. Was I think these people lose sight of the fact that you're just people. I mean, we can talk about the universe stuff all day. It's real easy to talk about the size of the universe and feel small, but somehow when we talk about the thing that maybe created the universe, now we can have a discussion with it. I don't know. That was more where my vitriol was coming from.
And that makes more sense to me when you put it that way. That does make more sense. I still think getting mad about that is the wrong response, because what can you do? And again, people reduce things to a point that they can understand it. And some people, they're going to reduce God to not only something that they can relate to and that they feel they can judge or they can accept or reject, but some people reduce God to not existing. And that's a real thing. So people are going to have that whole scale. Like, that's, go ahead. I'm just
sorry.
saying.
No, I need to shush myself. You're right. I got all excited because it was leading into the last point I wanted to make.
No, it's good. I'm glad it segued into your point. I'm just saying that you shouldn't let other people's efforts to, what's the right word for this? Pigeonhole something?
Trivialize.
It is trivialized, but it's not trivializing it just to trivialize it. It's because that's how they can understand it. And so for some people, that's the only way in which they think they can understand it. For some people, that's just unfortunately how limited their understanding and ability to experience this and comprehend it is. Everyone's ability to experience it is going to be different. Some people are going to tell you that they have a very wide spiritual band and that, you know, they can feel and that they have faith through what they feel and what they experience. And some people are going to be a little bit more empirical, and they're going to say, I believe it because of the word of God, or I believe it because of what I was taught, or I believe it because of X, Y, and Z. People are going to feel things and experience things and relate to things on an individual basis, no matter what, because at the end of the day, we are all just tiny little slivers of finite, not even infinity. We're slivers of finite existence. And that's just how people are going to be. And to let that make you mad about it, and instead of being mad about it, maybe we should be looking and saying, well, how can we make this more accessible to these people? If this is what I believe, I'm just trying to put myself in a Catholic, a proselytizing sort of perspective. If my belief is that you are very wrong about this and what you're doing is an insult, and instead of getting mad, I should be feeling sympathetic and saying, wow, you are missing out on salvation. What you are missing out on is the bigger picture and a connection to God and a relationship with God. I'm not going to get mad about this. I'm going to try to think about maybe how we can do a better job of spreading an understanding that will bring more people peace. I'm not saying you go to that person and say, whoa, dude, hold on, let me talk to you about this, because some people are just closed doors. But instead of getting mad about it, if you're really a proselytizing Christian, shouldn't you be taking that and saying, feeling sort of sad about it and sympathetic and saying, this poor soul, how do we do better? Shouldn't that be the takeaway?
Not if you're Old Testament like me.
Okay. Well, I mean, if you're Old Testament,
Well-
then tell me you're Christian, because we're gonna have some
Oh,
conflicts.
I can be. Well, I can be Christian in Old Testament. I can be a bad Christian in the
Well,
Old
go
Testament.
tell your wife
Well,
then that her
so-
testimony in court is only worth half of a man's, and then come back to me and tell me, how you're feeling and how you're doing, and we'll go
Hey,
from there.
sir, all the other religions back in the day were saying it was worth zero of a man's. The
Oh,
Christians were
goodness.
progressive.
We're
by
back
even
to this
giving
other
women-
things were worse, so my bad is good. We're back to
Hell
this
yeah,
argument
pun
again.
intended. Well, so that was the other point was I was going to bring around was that it's also widely believed that hell is just as much a hell, not because of fire and brimstone and literal gnashing of teeth, which I think there's still sort of an agreement on the Christian sects who believe in actual hell. I think they do actually believe in like lakes of fire and all that stuff. I think that is still like purported. But I mean, C.S. Lewis was one of the guys who also kind of said that hell might just be literally the lack of God. And a lot of people might willingly go there. They, through whatever reason, through their experiences or their own beliefs or whatever, they basically say, no, God, fuck you. I don't want salvation. I don't want you. And God goes, okay, that's what you want. And so the responses to Pascal's wager, I did come around to sitting there and thinking, it's kind of believed that there are exactly people like this that say, no, God, fuck you. And that's why that's there. But if someone is really being, I was going to say honest, but it's not really the right word. If someone is really being, I guess, kind of like forthright or
Sincere.
Yeah, sincere is probably the right word. If someone is
Earnest?
Yes, earnestly or sincerely trying to think about what's right, what's real, how they should act in the world. And we talked about this sort of, it's along the same vein as my reference with the screw tape letters, with that thing that C.S. Lewis wrote. They would never actually, with true conviction, say, whatever God is, I disagree with him. Someone who gets to that point cannot get out of their own way. They still at some base level believe that they can be more important than at least everybody else on earth, to then turn their attention towards like a screw you God kind of mentality. But if someone is really truly trying to say, what should I be doing with my life, they will never respond to even a Pascal's wager type of situation with like, screw that kind of God. Because at the end of the day, they're going to realize that they're not the greatest thing since sliced bread. And therefore, whatever God is, at the very least, will decide their fate. And there will be some version of acceptance for that. So that's, I guess, the source of my anger is that I do feel bad for the people that are struggling. I don't feel bad for the people who are saying, I would never follow a God like that, because that shows that there is nothing more important to you than yourself. And there's a lot of little in-between steps between saying that and actually thinking that I could argue, but that's essentially what you're saying. If you say, I can decide whether or not I follow God, you are also saying, even if you believe that God can easily smite you, you are also basically saying that you are better than God. You are on an equal moral plane with God. And this will explain it easily for people who are more on the emotional, like personal viewpoint side. I do not actually think that might makes right, at least for us, like on Earth. But if that ends up being God's only quality, is that if you're powerful, you win. If you're not powerful, you lose. And that's how it is. Then that's just how it is. I have to accept that.
I think I'm going to disagree with the last thing you said, despite the fact that I actually like a lot of how we've kind of the way you broke things down. To say that, and forgive me if I'm getting this wrong, if I am, unshush and correct me. If I say that I am going to be my own moral arbiter and I'm going to set some of my own morals, what I understand from what you said is that that's sort of saying I see myself as on a similar plane with God, or a greater plane maybe, because instead of following God's morals, I'm setting it myself and I'm following my own. Do I have that more or less correct, or am I
Yes.
way off?
And I mean, and this is assuming someone who's at least been exposed to this concept of some sort of, exterior to us existing authority figure.
Sure. Some 6-year-old living Inuit village with no electricity, no books, no one proselytizing. Right. They're not going to have this.
Correct.
Exposition. Okay.
Right. But
Exposure is the word.
even those cultures were like, ooh, the trees have spirits in them. We should worship them, because even they were like, well, something outside of me has to be at least some of my bumper guards here. Like it's even hedonistic stuff was looking for not humans to be the guides. So,
Well, sure. But,
but yeah.
so even if I'm setting
right.
my own morals, so in my case, but I guess I don't accept that God is the sole arbiter of morality, because if he's incomprehensible and we can't comprehend him, then how can we comprehend his morality? We can't fully comprehend that either. There has to be room in there for us to interpret it. And if I'm interpreting the rules for morality, some of that is based on my own subjectivity. Some of that is based on my
your
own
own imperfections
and my own imperfections and my own capabilities. So in a sense, we are all our own arbiters of morality. And to say that we're not is almost a scapegoat. It's almost like, for the Crusades or the Inquisition or whatever have you, it's almost like saying, well, I'm not really responsible because it's not my morality. I'm not setting it. That's kind of the slippery slide you go down, but we are all setting our own morals, and we should be. Yes, it should be influenced by what we believe in. And that is where I think God's morality plays a part. Because if I believe in God and I believe God wants me to be kind, and God wants me to love people, and God wants me to raise the world up and do good things, then that's going to affect my morality. But I'm still setting that morality. And that's the same justification that, Spanish priests used to burn Aztec temples and all of their codexes and documents and histories to the ground, and that we used to conquer and proselytize Native Americans and destroy Celtic tribes. They felt they were doing that within God's moral framework, that it was the right thing, because if they didn't, these people's souls were going to hell, and this was the road to salvation, to force them to worship the right God. We always set the framework for our morals from our own understanding of God's morality. And so, yes, so God's morality is a principle, but it's how we choose to interpret, not even how we interpret it, how we choose to interpret it, because we do it subjectively.
Okay, so first of all, I think I can make a real argument, especially if I brushed up on all of it again, that the burning other locales and all that stuff was definitely not oh, this is best for them. That was just a faintly cloaked power trip is what that was. I mean, did you talk about the Catholic Church scandals even recently with the...
I didn't even go to the recent. Yeah, I didn't.
Well, but that's right. But that's exactly what it was. That was, people just used that as a shield to do their own selfish biddings. And I think that's really what Crusades were. And that was an abuse of people who were blindly following, say, the Christian church at those points in time.
But that's a problem when you say that God is the source of all your morals, is that you can get blinded. That's why we have cults that do odd things. Right, that's why we have Palestine and Israel clashing the way that they are.
You're making the fair point of saying, well, then I'm setting the moral code, and I'm contending that no, you're really not. You are, again, if you're being sincere in your volitions, you are trying to best emulate what you believe God wants you to do. Really, by that definition, then you are not a moral arbiter. God is your moral arbiter, and you are just trying your best to emulate the morals of God, what the ethics of God, if you will. If you're trying to do that, you are not the source of what is actually right and wrong. You are just trying to mirror it. And I hope this doesn't come off as a cop-out answer, because this is another side of my whole worldview, I guess, if you will. Ironic that I use that when we're talking about an external potential thing, but is that I also have this very firm belief that we are not even children, really. I mean, the Christian faith likes to make the reference of God the Father, and we are God's children and all of that. And the purpose of that is kind of to explain the gap between God and his understanding and people's understanding of how things work. But I really think it's even worse than that. I do think that in so many words, God will give you an A for effort at the end of it all if you're actually trying. I really do think that, because like we've talked about, when we're trying to postulate, if you will, the Judeo-Christian God, all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving, omnipresent, so literally fucking everywhere, like even in the spaces that we can't even understand. I mean, like think Interstellar in when he's in the bookshelf and space time and all that. Like this is a God that's doing all of that everywhere all the time, constantly. To even think that one religion somehow has it all exactly right in their tenets, I if they have it all right, it's because that God went on people's minds and made sure that they said exactly what needs to be said. And so I mean it's that literally can't be right without God anyway. So if you're sincerely trying, God will give you an A for effort. And if you're sincerely trying, you will never view yourself as the true decision maker, if you will. You are trying to emulate what you think God wants you to do. Your decisions are based entirely on something outside of yourself, really. And that's my best way to answer that, is that, and I think that's to your point, we very often don't really know what we're doing and don't really know what to do. And that comes with the territory of being human. We are so out of focus, really, of how everything is, that it's just not going to happen any other way.
Yeah, see, I know a fair number of secular humanists that I think are the arbiters of their own morals and that have a strong and solid moral fabric that I wish there was more of in the world. So that's part of the conflict I have.
But where do they get that from? Like what? So okay, so someone
and I don't know, but if they don't
What's
believe
that
in a
say?
God, I can't necessarily
but
attribute it to God.
that's kind of what I'm saying. Maybe this is my own mental impasse, but if you're someone like, let's just take your cliche atheist.
Okay.
And if there are any of you listening out here, I would actually really love an email about this if it would help. Because if you're a tried and true atheist, you honest to goodness, sincerely, if you will, believe that this is an accident, the Big Bang or matter or whatever. Like you just think there's no rhyme or reason actually to it. What tells you that you shouldn't, just to use crazy examples, you shouldn't murder your fellow man? What tells you that you shouldn't be robbing a bank every chance you get? Is it just because other people will murder you back? Like what's, I find it so hard to believe that people can truly even function without something outside of them to tack onto.
I don't find it hard to believe at all. Yeah, I think.
Well, I think the people that
are
do
in general,
that, I think the people that focus only on themselves and they think they know everything and there's nothing else to actually tack onto, I think that's how you get all this moral relativism stuff of like, my truth and all that stuff. I think that's how you get that.
now, see, I know a lot of people who are of that moral relativism, and it's not about them. It's still about people. But the basic, as stupid as, like I was going to say, as stupid as people are pretty smart. There are dummies in the world.
The masses often do the right thing,
right?
Even when they don't know why. Yeah,
I think it's very simple to look at things and say, I want to live in a world where people aren't getting murdered and raped and stolen from on a day-to-day basis, because that world seems like a happier world and a better world for me and my family. And therefore, I am not going to promote or contribute to murder and rape and theft because it makes sense logically. And I think that is a position that people can easily get to. And I'm struggling to see why you don't feel that way, why you feel like that's such a reach and it's so impossible. I'm really curious as to why you feel so differently about that, because it seems such a logical thing to me.
Well, it is a logical thing, but you're also talking to someone who believes that logic is one of those things that exists outside of people. I believe that logic is one of those gifts, effectively, that we are imparted upon by whatever our creator is. Animals don't have logic.
Sure they do.
They have varying levels of logic, but we are the most logical critter on the earth
that we know of.
When we talk about aliens, I mean, they might be,
Oh no, I was thinking more in terms of whales.
Well, but I mean,
according to your logic, every animal learns that it does certain things to not die, and that's the whole basis of evolution. Is that the ones that do certain things to not die?
Instinct, though. There's plenty of animals like that pop right out of.
Instinct comes from evolution and learned behaviors originally, though. That's what it comes from. The bird that flies away when something under the water, like as it's floating in the water, something gets close and it feels the pressure and the bird flies away and survives. Yes, that's an instinct, but it's an instinct because its ancestors for thousands of generations The ones that survived were the ones that went, oop, that's dangerous. I should fly away, and did so. My dog, his instinct
But
is
that
not
implies
to,
a logical decision that some of those past critters wouldn't have had the time to decide on potentially.
okay. So my dog, when
Okay,
I tell him to sit, it's not his instinct to sit. That is not his instinct. But he can make a
No.
logical association that if he sits when I tell him to, he's going to get praise and a reward, and it's going to make me
Correct.
happy.
It
That is
can-
a logical learned behavior, and that's a dog. So if my 2-year-old dog can learn something and apply logic to it, why can't a human being?
How come a human infant seems to have, well, they do have some instincts, but how come instincts seem to actually be more prevalent, more helpful in other creatures? How come critters with seemingly lesser levels of logic essentially know more out of the gate? This is a whole other discussion. We might not want to actually do this.
Oh, I'm
but-
not saying that they don't have instincts. I'm not saying they certainly do, because a seahorse can't swim out of the pouch and then never be helped by parents again and live if it doesn't have instincts. Of course,
Well,
animals have instincts. I'm not
Well,
saying
I
they
think
don't.
actually babies, I used to think babies were perfectly helpless and had no instincts whatsoever too, but I think there are few instincts.
They
even
learn
human
to
infants.
cry and they do things. But what
Well,
you're
right,
saying
but
is that
so-
it's all instinct with animals, and because there are
Let's get
instincts,
back.
that
Let's
there's
get
no
back to the
logic.
point I'm trying to make here. Is that so? If you're a true, tried and true atheist, and you think there's no actual anything beyond this, and this is, I am willing to admit this may just be my own mental impasse. I still ask why. Like, if there's nothing beyond this, why wouldn't you do quite literally anything that advances your own personal position in this world? Like, think cutthroat politician who's willing to literally throw anybody under the bus, maybe even kill someone who's in their way, like, all that stuff. Why wouldn't every atheist be doing that? If you value your own family, your own wife and kids and all that stuff, fine, you can chalk that up to sort of a survival instinct of procreation and all that. But why wouldn't you just remove any literally physical barriers? Why would you want to upkeep the fabric of society if it's really hard to articulate what's in my head. Society in and of itself is good because people work together. It creates more resources. It creates more bounty. Division of labor creates, supermarkets with plentiful food and all that stuff. But why aren't more atheists vying to take advantage of the religious types that are doing it for some like moral, ethical outside of themselves? Like, I mean, plenty of religious types sit there and say, well, suffering is good for us. So why aren't you as the atheist being like, fuck yeah, it is, dude, I'm going to make you suffer more and make sure I get more of my own shit? Like, why isn't there more motivation for that, I guess?
Because that doesn't make the world you're living in any better. You seem to think that atheists causing
it makes
suffering.
your world better.
No, it does not. Causing suffering to someone else does not necessarily make my world better.
Why?
That is a crazy statement.
No,
and
okay, but why?
Not true.
Tell me why.
How does inducing a negative into someone else's life make my life better?
Okay, but what motivates that? Is it because
I have a finite amount of energy?
Better?
Right?
Because that's better for you?
You are way overthinking this, and you've got a weird mental impasse. I have a finite amount of time and energy, right? So just as a human being, I have a finite amount of time, energy. There's a finite amount of that, right?
Right.
I can spend that time doing things that bring me joy and make me happy.
Right.
Or I can spend that time doing things that put suffering into other people and bring me no joy and do not make me happy. Why would I do the latter? Why would I take my finite reserves and put it towards something like that?
My question is, why does inflicting suffering on other people make you unhappy? If
it's not that it makes me unhappy, but it doesn't make me happy. Why am I going to go out of my way to do something that doesn't contribute to being happy or being more fulfilled?
I'm saying that atheists should be shittier than they are, actually, is what I'm actually saying. I think atheists should be shittier people.
Well, and the fact that they're not flies in the face of your logic.
I disagree. I think that they're not means that there is some little framework that even atheists hold outside of themselves that dictates even their actions within society. Like,
wow. Okay. It's so impossible that they just realize this is not something that's going to make me happy, so I'm not going to do it.
Yes, like I've said, I've
I love you, man. This is fascinating to me.
I know.
This
Okay,
is great.
let's use I almost don't want to use an example. I feel like it's an
Is that
easy
good,
one
huh?
because it's well.
I
No,
believe in Occam's razor. I believe
here's
in
the
just
problem.
going for it.
I'm married, and this is a very carnal thing that I feel like people can relate to.
Okay.
So when you know, you're attracted to other people, you're
Sure.
dating, and that attraction often starts physically. But then you find someone that you want to actually like not just physically interact with, and you maybe you end up marrying this person. To say that, well, once you're married, both women and men in marriage have physical attractions to other men and women that they're not married to. So I guess in so many words, what I'm saying is, and I understand there's an easy counter argument to this because I'm also watering it down with what I think is a super easy way to try to express what I'm saying. Why wouldn't you try to cheat on your spouse without getting caught more often?
Oh, there's lots of reasons why someone wouldn't do
in
that.
my mind, the atheist, I'm doing air quotes. Sorry, I realize a lot of people are not going to see this.
For those who are listening, he is doing air quotes.
I'm doing
atheist.
really hard air quotes. Your regular person atheist is saying, well, I'm not cheating on my wife, my spouse, my husband, whatever, because that could threaten this relationship. And I value this relationship so much that I don't want to get rid of it because it's good for me. Like that's what your regular atheist person is saying. I'm saying, like, kind of like, why don't you try though? Like, why don't you try to have your cake and eat it too? Why don't you try to get your carnal desires on the side and still maintain your marriage? Like, wouldn't you if you could?
Well, some people do. A lot of religious people do.
Correct. Well, correct. That's my. But this is a really watered down thing. But I'm saying I think atheists should be sitting there saying, well, if all these stupid religious people are trying to like maintain society for the greater good, why don't I just take a little extra out of the breadbasket? Why don't I take a little extra selfishness for myself? And why don't I like break a few rules and break a few laws and all that? Why is it the religious people are in some ways just as bad as the non-religious with that?
It's blowing my mind that you're making these correlations. This is twisted. Okay,
I'm trying to water it down. Okay, I'm trying to water it down by saying, like,
but I still think that it's.
Let me put it this way:
you just are.
If I was an atheist, like an honest to God atheist, in my mind, I would be making a lot more money, and I would be having a. This is going to sound weird, from an sort of a hedonistic atheist perspective. I would be having a much better life. I have so many great things in my life, but part of the reason I feel like I have those things is because I do believe in this exterior moral code and that I'm doing my best to follow it, and I'm therefore being granted these blessings. But if there's no exterior God blessing me with these things, then there's always more that I could have, and I should be trying to get it. Does that make sense?
Not even a little bit, but
okay, good, great.
I understand the way you're looking at it.
Like, that's what I'm trying to key in on, really. That's what I'm trying to key on. I think in so many words, I'm trying to say that if I was an atheist, I would basically be a sociopath.
I disagree.
Like, I want that. I'm going to get it because that's what I want, and that's it. And there's nothing exterior to me other than the police stopping me.
It doesn't have to be exterior. It can be as simple as risk reward. It can be as simple as I'm not going to cheat on my wife because A, I might be unsuccessful. Like there might be a lack of opportunity. B, if I get caught, I lose something very good in my life that I'm not going to be able to replace. There are all kinds of reasons could be there. It could be as simple as I said I wouldn't, and there's a trust between us. It's a mutual understanding.
Boy, but
there are lots of reasons
that puts
here that
your spouse's trust, even though, as something that's potentially more important than your own whims, though. Like that still puts something outside of yourself.
But I'm not doing it because of God in that case. If I was an atheist, and then I'm not an atheist, but if I was an atheist, everything could very simply be measured in risk reward.
This feels like a Sergeant Bilko line, though, where he was like, like, what happened when my wife left me? Oh, you got your wife back? No, he got me another wife, a better wife. Like, I don't know. That's actually a fair point of like, well, if you're putting your spouse's trust ahead of you, that's still another temporal thing ahead of you, I guess. It just feels, I don't know.
You have a really weird impasse here where you are incapable
I think part of it is
seeing anything other than if you don't have God driving your morals, you're going to be a bad person, or
It's
you
not
should
even
be a
God,
bad
though.
person.
I think at my base level, I believe that it's that most of human function comes from believing in things outside of yourself, and the strongest is something permanent outside of yourself. So if you're basing all of your function on something that's temporary, even outside of yourself, but temporary, then you would recognize that if you're being a
Everything we
truly
base it on
logical
is
person.
temporary.
And
That we
maybe
can
that's it.
experience with our senses.
Maybe this is caused from me sort of creating my own logical contradiction in my head of like, well, everyone has to base something outside of themselves. So if there's nothing outside of us, then you wouldn't base anything outside of yourself. And that's maybe my issue, is that
Yeah.
people don't have that problem. People are fine with basing. I think that's it. I cannot understand if you don't have a moral code or a moral arbiter of some kind outside of yourself, then there's nothing outside of yourself. It's kind of like an absolute for me. And maybe that's the problem here, is there are obviously plenty of people who don't share the same worldview that I do, because I see it every day.
Yeah.
That's what perplexes me. That's why I think if I was an atheist, I would be like a sociopath.
I think
Because
you
to
are
me,
logical
there's nothing
enough.
holding me back.
No, I disagree. I think if you were an atheist, you would be logical enough to realize that there are consequences in the world for certain actions, and that some of them are not worth the action. I think you would understand that.
Well,
And
but that's the problem.
What's
That's
the
my problem. No, the problem is that I've taken this line of reasoning. I went through a phase, we'll call it a phase, where I was just like, yeah, this whole God thing seems kind of fucking stupid. And I came back around to, at the minimum, that there's got to be some sort of creating thing for the universe, whether it's, cognizant or not. Like it could
Right.
just be some sort of semi non-cognizant being doing whatever, some machination. But what brought me around to that, ironically, was logic. I was just sitting there thinking that the stuff holding me back from just being sociopathic almost implies that there's some reason not to be sociopathic. And so there must be something outside of me. Like the very existence of logic created for me that there's an existence of something that sort of establishes that logic to begin with. Because if I was viewing it strictly for my own personal gain, logic says I should just go take it. Logic does not say I should hold back, even if I can take it. So,
okay, I want to keep going on this because this is fascinating, and I'm so happy to get all these puzzle pieces falling into place. This is, I think, for me personally, this is the most interesting talk that we've had. And I know not all of our listeners are going to feel that way.
Really?
You might not, because I feel like I'm putting you on. I feel like I'm shining a spotlight on you in a dark room. But I'm fascinated by this, and I would love to talk more about this. But I want to leave you with one other question pertaining to this before we get all kinds of twisted up down another rabbit hole. And then we have other important issues to get into. We have another
we have
debate to settle.
It's very significant. There's something way more important we have to debate about other
this
than
is true. This is
the
true.
existence of God.
Yes. Well, maybe it's not more important than the existence of God, but it's more, it's something that at least we can experience and comprehend, whereas we cannot. We agree that you can't fathom an infinite
All right,
God.
give me one more question.
But the question is, given your current belief and the way that you see this, and that God, an external source and an omnipotent and omnipresent and omni-everything God, is the arbiter of your morals, given that that's your stance, what if Terrence Howard was actually God?
Well, then he's doing a really piss poor job of explaining himself.
Oh, come on. You shouldn't say that about your Lord and Savior walking in flesh on this earth. Come on. You are in trouble, sir. 1 times 1 is going to equal 3 the next time you try to do it now. For those listening who haven't seen our reaction video, we did a reaction video to Terrence Howard's new math. It was a test. We didn't even mean to record that night, but
I'll give you credit for this, because the really easy, low-hanging fruit answer is to say, well, he would just like do a miracle or something. That the expectation that I would place on whatever God happens to be.
he already defeated gravity. Isn't that a miracle?
Well, you know what? But that was actually one of the things that people used to, the proverbial knock against Jesus that's actually written down, was just like people were saying, well, you're God. Well, perform this miracle. And he was basically like, no, I'm God. I'm not going to do whatever you tell me to do. And they were like,
I'm not going to walk on water for tips, is the way Terrence
Right.
Howard actually put it. And I actually really liked when he said that. That was the one thing he said I liked. I was like,
no, that's a really good point. But so, I mean, but
you don't need to seriously answer that question. It's okay. We can move on. I can see the cognitive dissonance forming in your head.
no, it's not the cognitive. The problem is I do actually want to answer it seriously because it's there, but I don't know how to use English to convey what I'm trying to say.
English is hard tonight because we're 3 weeks rusty. I think that's what this is. We haven't recorded in a while.
I think this ends up being the logical contradiction side of things, is that I can't, there's primally, carnally, whateverly, Terrence Howard is obviously not God, so he can't turn out to be God. And if he does turn out to be God, then I guess I'm just fucked. Like that's the real answer, is that let's presume your thing is correct, and I'm just screwed.
Maybe he'll give you an A for effort.
Well, God should be some version of impressive, to the effect of like, he should at least be charismatic. Part of the people who didn't follow, I mean, again, this is a silly example because it's kind of falling back on the Judeo-Christian thing, but it's an accessible example to say what I'm trying to say. The people who didn't follow Jesus, they viewed him as a threat to at least their own power, their own influence. There is absolutely nothing threatening to me about Terrence Howard at all.
He was War Machine for one movie, at least.
But that's kind of what I'm thinking, is that like there's nothing charismatic about him at all.
Oh, I disagree. I think he's extremely charismatic. I think that's why so many people buy into the word vomit that he spews at people, and I think he's extremely charismatic.
I just see someone who's not, he's all talk and no bite. I don't see the actual bite, and I think that's it. And that's why if he is God, then I'm gonna get bit real fucking hard.
Yeah, you're in trouble.
Yeah. So there you go. There's your serious answer.
All right. So what we have started to do, since we tried to get a little more structure with the show, is we try to send an email a day or two before we record, and it says, hey, let's pick a subject to talk about, and let's line up one for you and one for me, and then let's have like a top 3 or a draft item, and then we'll do dad jokes, and then we'll do updates, and then we'll close. We try to structure it for you guys because we love you guys and you deserve structure, even though we're bad at it. And Doug sent me this one, and I was very excited about it. I didn't send the subject back because I rightfully guessed this would take us well over an hour to do, and bravo to us, we did it. This took up the entire time.
It wasn't even forced.
No, it wasn't even forced. Honestly, we had to restrain it. I feel like we could easily go another hour.
Oh my god, easy.
I didn't even bring up my issues with Pascal's wager, which is kind of where I thought we were going to go. I didn't bring up like 3 of the 4. I didn't even get
I have plenty of issues with it too. Right. It was just like I think it's a good.
Doing that. Nope, we're not going back to it. We're done. We're past it.
I'm just saying it's great. Read up on it, folks.
You should read up on it.
It's an accessible way to entertain some of the actual pivotal God questions.
And when you do it, I want you to picture a monster truck, and I want you to say, let's blaze, and then just put yourself in the shoes of a 5-year-old who likes that show.
And then Terrence Howard's behind the wheel.
And Terrence Howard is behind the wheel. And the license plate says 1x1 = 2. But the other subject, the top 3 that Doug suggested was actually a top 1. Who's the best? And he wanted to know who the best Ninja Turtle was.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle.
Yes, the best Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. And
I didn't want to know. I wanted to tell you which one is the best. But go on.
And you were wrong, so that's fine. So I will be arguing for the one, the only, the most necessary of all the turtles, Donatello. And wow. Douglas will be arguing for, I think, Leo Luzinardo, I think. Is that who you picked?
I think that's the proper Italian pronunciation.
I think so. So. Leonardo da Vinci spent his whole life trying to do something that Terrence Howard did by the time he was 6. Were you aware of that?
Well, Terrence Howard had previous lives, though. He's been working on it for a while.
That's true. Remember. That's true. Yeah, he got that flower.
So why is Donatello the best?
Donatello is the best for a lot of reasons, but strictly from an empirical point of view, he is the one that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles need the most. They do not exist, and they do not succeed, and they are not the heroes that they become without Donatello. I would argue that aside from Splinter, who's probably not in the running here, we said Turtles. Aside from Splinter, he is the most important turtle for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to exist as a superhero team.
Yeah, but why?
Because without him, they don't have technology to survive in the sewers. They don't have the turtle van and the blimp and half of their weapons and radios and TVs. They don't have someone to solve the problems of the technodrome and contend with the Krang's alien technology, which is vastly superior to Earth technology. Without him, they literally have zero chance in their struggle against the Krang.
Okay. Yeah, valid argument.
He's also, in a more basic level, all of them are master ninjas. They are all exceptionally well trained with weapons. You know, they're specialized in one each, of course, we know, but they are all exceptional ninjas. They're exceptional fighters, I guess is how I should put it. He's the only one who also has an additional exceptional skill. He's the only one who's got two areas in which he's a mastery. One is going to be science and one is going to be combat. No one else has a second skill in which they're a master. And he is, according to the comic books, a certified genius. So he's the only person who's got two separate levels of certified expertise.
It's ironic because that's such an analytical answer. It's kind of shit that I would do.
I thought that was the one you would want. And then I've got a third answer that's way more subjective, but I'm going to stand to it.
Younger me liked Donatello, but very much not for that reason. It's because I just thought a bow staff was fucking cool.
I mean, it is. Yeah, it is.
No, Leonardo, or excuse me, I believe the proper pronunciation was Leo Leonardo.
Yes, that's
was that what you said? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah,
Sorry.
That's with the Italian flair. Yeah.
Well, Leonardo is the best because he is the leader. And that's really it. I mean, they're all, you know, well-versed, well-trained, you know, high-level ninjas. But Leonardo he's the impetus. He's the one that when things get tough, he brings them back together, organizes them, and, you know, sets the stage for getting back into the fight and doing everything. So in my mind, yes, Donatello's value is he's essentially like he's the engine. He creates all the stuff. He helps make everything more convenient. He creates, but you still need a driver. You still need someone to use that correctly. And so, I mean, what good is a car if you don't have a driver? It's a wonderful piece of machinery, but unless you actually use it to get to the right place, it's worthless. So that's my reason why I like Leonardo the best, was because he's a leader. I think also, this is why I liked both of them. This is just a total aside that I've had in a long time. And I want to talk about the Ninja Turtles because they're amazing. The 4 Ninja Turtles actually also embody the 4 sort of basic personality types. Raphael is the feeler. Donatello is the thinker. Leonardo is the controller. And Michelangelo is the entertainer. And they all kind of function that way. And I've always been sort of a thinker controller, probably thinker first overall, but that's why I've always leaned toward Leonardo and Donatello to begin with. But I think Leonardo is ultimately, he's, in my mind, he's really the one that make them go. He may not be, like, they may not exist as they are without Donatello, but he's the one actually, here's a good way to put it, biblically, since we were going on about that all the time. Donatello is the talents and Leonardo is the one using his talents, going out there and using the talents. We talked about the parable of the talents in the past.
We did, and I disagree with this analogy strongly, but go on.
Well, it's just that. If you have 5 talents, then your job is not to bury them. Your job is to go out there and make 7 talents out of them. And Leonardo is the one going out there and directing the talents appropriately.
Except that he frequently misuses them and mismanages them, and that's when Splinter and often Raphael have to step in and correct it and fix it. And at the end, Leonardo almost always walks away with some learning lesson, but he doesn't manage his talents well. And that's sort of like the ongoing struggle there is him learning to use them, and he never really gets there. Like,
you remember those times though when Donatello or Raphael, first of all, he never tries to lead shit. He's always like, fuck you, I'm going off and doing this on my own.
No, he doesn't ever want to lead. No, I kind of like Raph for that.
Michelangelo, actually. Same thing. He wants to try to help, but he doesn't know how to handle it. Donatello tries to, but it ends up being not convincing enough for at least Raphael. Leonardo is the only one that can actually bring them all together and say, we're doing this. And so that's really, I think that's why I lean towards him, because you can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't use it for something, your talent's worthless.
See, I feel like Leonardo often failed to do that. And often
But he's the
Splinter
only
had to
one
do
who
it.
was able to even do it or even
No,
try to do it.
Splinter was the one that did it most of the time, and that was why I look at Leonardo as kind of a disappointment. He's a Splinter light. He's a
Okay, let's
diluted
include
version of
Splinter.
Splinter.
Obviously, I'm going to pick Splinter if we put Splinter in the realm because he's the father figure.
Right. And that argument I can get
Did you
down
hear
with.
that?
I still think it's Donatello. Yes, that was well done. I still think it's Donatello, but I can get on board with Splinter. I just can't get on board with Leo. Okay, so he's the leader.
No,
so
that's
he's
the thing.
best.
If you said who's the best out of who's your
pick
favorite
Splinter.
out of Splinter and the four, obviously Splinter.
Yeah,
He
okay.
took them in when they were babies and he taught them the martial arts and he planted those seeds and he's the father figure.
You've got that good
come
dad
on.
nurturing
And he's
spirit. I
got
like
the
that about you.
bathrobe thing going on too, like dad should. It's great.
It's a kimono, isn't it?
That's fine, same thing.
Yeah, all right, same thing. You're probably right.
I would be remiss if I didn't say something else insensitive. But no, if we're talking about just the four,
Yep.
Leonardo is the only one who has ever been able to actually drive all four of them. Yes, he makes mistakes all the time, but that's not the point. The fact that he's out there doing it, trying to get them, the rest of them can never bring it together.
So you're a big Joe Biden fan then? I guess Joe Biden's the best. I mean, that's pretty simple, ironclad logic. All right, I'm going to stick with Donatello. You can stick with Leo / Biden.
Me would have taken that bait, but instead I just laugh at it. I'm clearly more of a Trump guy, obviously.
No, Joe Biden's the leader, and you said the leader is the best. That's what you said.
The leader of what?
You just said the leader.
No, I think by your premise, I'm more of a Barack Obama guy because he's actually the one running shit, obviously, with how many people shake his hands at events.
Yeah, I'm still going to go with it's some billionaire whose name we don't know. I'm still thinking trillionaire. I'm sorry, quadrillionaire.
It's clearly Elon.
I don't think it is. I think things would be very different if Elon was running the show. In some ways better and in some ways
who's
worse.
the shadow? So you're thinking about who's actually running the shadow lizard people government of the world?
Yeah, and it's not a name that we know. It's someone living in Abu Dhabi for
it's probably
6 months
right.
of the
It's
year.
probably nobody we know, but like but his most trusted associate is probably Jamie Dimon. I might actually bet money on that shit. Jamie Dimon, he's the only person that we know of on record who basically looked at like some of the US government and was like, fuck you, and he still got to keep his government board position. So he might have a position that we're not sure of, or at least he has dirt on somebody. Clearly,
maybe. I think it's a bunch of trickster gods from old mythologies who've been surviving in the background, just in the shadows. And I
you
think
just want it to be Loki. That's all you want. You
I
just
don't even want it to be Loki. Loki's not even my favorite trickster god. I don't know. Give me Luke or Gwydion or Hermes or Anansi or Coyote or Quetzalcoatl. Give me any of those. I'll take any one.
I'll take Coatl.
I'm working on a book right now, and actually they're all the same person, and Jesus Christ was one as well. And it's a fun little story I've started where Jesus Christ was basically just another trickster god, another image the trickster god took on to kind of shape the world. And it's like a 5,000 year conspiracy that he's been working on, and it's kind of fun. It's kind of neat. That's the story I'm working on right now for funsies when I have spare time.
So it's Hindu then.
No, because he never dies and gets reincarnated. He's just perpetually surviving and changing.
There's only one of them?
No, well, there's only one of him, trickster god. There are many gods, but he's the only one with a long-term plan who's pretending to be lots of other gods and other religions and is
and the other
shaping
gods
all
what?
these cultures.
Don't give a shit?
No, they don't realize that he's one person. They don't realize he's one. They think that each of these...
So he's fooling the other gods too?
Yes, because he's smarter than them. Yes, he's not as powerful as them, but he's smarter.
It's a really tough balance to pull off.
It is.
I'd be interested to see how it shows up.
Fortunately, I'm an extremely vain, narcissistic egotist, and I'm going to go ahead and think that I can pull this off until it's done. We'll fake it.
So why aren't you a sociopathic atheist then?
Because I understand that a world where people do good things is better than a world where people do bad things.
Yes, which you somehow magically come to without having any moral code outside yourself. Dad jokes?
Not me. I believe in God. I'm not a Christian, but I believe in God. But that's for another day. Yeah, dad jokes.
Yeah, let's do dad jokes.
I did my turtle first. Go ahead and do your dad joke.
Okay. Did you hear about the Ninja Turtle who became a chef?
I'm so happy you did a Ninja Turtle one. A Ninja Turtle who became a chef.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man,
it's more of a punchline. It's not really a
okay. Go ahead.
Quizzical.
Go ahead.
He was really great at shelling out pizzas.
No, I don't like it.
Well, you can suck it.
That's fair. Actually, that dovetails nicely with my dad joke.
Okay.
That's perfect.
Wonderful. Okay.
Have you heard all the people asking about, the conspiracy theory that one of the Ninja Turtles was actually gay?
Pause. Did you miss the shelling pun, or you just didn't care for it?
No, I got it. I just didn't care for it.
Okay, fine. Okay,
I
fair.
just
All
didn't
right.
think it was
Anyway,
that good.
so the gay Ninja Turtle.
Yeah. Have you heard the conspiracy theories that one of the Ninja Turtles the whole time has actually been gay? Have you heard any of these?
These fake things that you come up with for your joke. No, Thomas, I haven't.
So they did an interview with the original writers and creators, and their answer was, "I'm sorry, we have a strict don't ask Donatello policy."
It's good.
That wasn't bad, right? That was good.
I don't know. Honestly, I like my joke better though.
That's all right. You also like Leonardo better, so your taste is already in question.
Yeah. Sorry, I like to lead at the forefront.
Yeah, I like good leadership. I don't care for poor leadership.
Yeah. All right. All right. I think that's about it. Do we have any? Did you have any updates? For
I
anything
feel like I
other
had
than just
updates, but I
people?
didn't write them down.
I don't know, because I was mentioning that as I wrote down that I watched Ready Player One finally. At this point, a while ago. It
Did
was
you
just
read the
one of
book, or you just watched the movie?
just the movie,
Yeah, the movie was okay, but the book was phenomenal. I wish you'd have read the
just
book.
like every other movie based on a book ever. Just
Not
about.
all of them. No, The Godfather
no.
was just as good as the book. The Godfather was fantastic. The Exorcist, I think, was better than the book.
Mm-hmm.
No, there have been plenty of movies that were as good as or better than the books. But
I don't know. Fun concept.
yeah.
Seemed like it was going to be more realistic a couple of years ago with the whole Facebook virtual reality thing, and then most people were like, "No, stupid."
I didn't tuck my Donatello in here before
No,
we
you
did our
didn't.
talk, and
It
I
was
should
awful.
have.
It's
It
too bad
was.
it's not. Too bad we're not on video.
I know, right? It's okay. He's here in
Boy,
spirit.
he looks. See, it's so cute. You put him in your little shirt like that so you can carry him around because he needs help with knowing where he needs to go because he's not a leader.
No, I'm carrying him to the van that he built for me. So while you're walking your sorry butt with Leo to the pizza shop, we're driving, we're there, we got the pizzas, we're back, we're eating before you got here with the micro keg that he built, put in my house.
Oh, that's nice. So Donatello's going to drive the van for you then.
I'm good with that. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Then you'll crash.
He's the one that knows how it works the best. The only one I don't want driving the van is Mikey because, I'm not going to get where I think I'm going.
He's going to be too distracted.
Oh gosh, I did have some. Oh, you know what? I got an update.
Okay.
It is currently July 11th. By the time this one releases, it'll be
I
September.
was thinking we need to stop saying that because every week people will be like, "What the shit?"
Oh, it's fine. We're gonna catch this. We're gonna catch this gap up. We'll release a couple of doubles now that we got Tomas working on it. We'll get closer to caught up.
We'll get closer.
But September 14th, the Two Dads Talking podcast is one of the sponsors for the Next Up Music Festival 2024 in Westerly, Rhode Island, Wilcox Park. So if anybody is interested in learning more about that thing, you should go to YouTube and just search for Next Up Music Festival, or you can go to nextupfestival.com. There are lots of places to find information about it, but you should absolutely check it out. It's a fantastic free community event that's put on by Big Lux Violin and associates and partners. And it's just an incredible all-day event in the park that 7 straight hours of just phenomenal bands and music and a good time. Check it out. We're a sponsor. We're going to be there. Well, I will be there. Doug won't quite be in town yet, I don't think.
September 14th, you said?
Yeah.
Promise I might be doing something else because I think that's right over the weekend.
Yeah, you'll be doing silly family things at your reunion.
Yeah, God. Oh,
someone did ask about when you were coming to town today. I had a listener ask me just today when you were coming to town.
I think it's like the 12th or 13th, so right around there.
Yeah. Cool. We'll see. We'll figure it out. But the Next Up Music Festival, check it out. We're a sponsor. I wouldn't put our money into something that wasn't awesome. Anything else? Any more updates?
Famous last words.
Famous last words. Famous last words.
Oh, just talk nice about us to your neighbors. That's it.
Yeah. I'm going to go back and double down what I said to begin the cast. Just share us with one friend. Tell one friend, hey, I've got a cast.
True.
I think you'd
just
like it.
one.
Just text them the link on Spotify, on Apple Music, on whatever. Send them a link and tell them, hey, check this out. See if you like it. Maybe just not today's episode because, we went way deep.
It was way too long. Yeah. Give them Oprah's Paradox. Number 10.
Okay.
That was a good one.
It was a good one, but I'm thinking give them something more polarizing. Give them the election results.
The election one.
Yeah, give them that, or IVF in Alabama, or give them one of what is a woman. Give them one of the really polarizing ones.
Oh man!
Because if they listen to that and they get through it and they don't remove you from their phone contacts list, then they're our kind of person, and that's how we know it. That's the barrier right there. If you get through one of those and you don't hate us and the person that recommended you, then this is probably for you.
Oh, that's true.
All right. We're good. It's been great talking to Doug. It's been 3 weeks off. It's good that we finally caught back up. Thank you guys for listening. We really appreciate you guys. If you are listening to this and you have a differing opinion, if you are an atheist that Doug thinks is godless and evil and wicked and a serial killer, please send us an email. Send us a comment on Facebook. No, I want in on this. I'm fascinated by your position on this. I want a part of this. Reach out, comment, say something, tell us who your favorite turtle is, tell us why it's Donatello, and we're excited to hear from you guys.
I'm a leader. I don't need my favorite Ninja Turtle hanging off of me while I record this.
I am a good leader. I support those that I lead.
Good for you. Bye.